Don't miss any content. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell.
Guys, welcome back to Sahara Football. As usual, I am your host, Selassie Fiawe. A decade is coming to an end. 2019 marks the end of a decade, and today we're going to look back at the past decade in terms of Ghana football. As usual, I am your host, Selassie Fiawe. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel and you've not subscribed, please endeavor to subscribe and click on the notification bell. Our merch are still on sale. Go to our merch store if you are interested in supporting this channel. This is a great way to do that. Amazing souvenirs there for this festive season. So the decade started in 2009, and without much ado, it started off with a World Cup win for Ghana at the under-20 level. Andre Ayew was the captain of the Black Satellites team that won that tournament at the under-20 level. Dominic Adia was the player of the tournament, highest goal scorer as well. And Emmanuel Ajimambedu was the player who scored the decisive penalty that meant that Ghana won the under-20 World Cup for the very first time on African soil in Egypt, and no country has been able to emulate that since then. 2009 was the under-20 World Cup win, and it was a really memorable one. If you haven't watched it, I have done a video looking back at where those players are now. It's happier. You can go and have a look at it. In 2010, I move on to, it was another year of heartbreaks. In 2009, a rare time in which we won a penalty shootout to win a major tournament, and in 2010 it was quite a different story. We qualified for our second consecutive World Cup, and earlier that year we took part in the African Cup of Nations in Angola, and Ghana made it successfully all the way to the final, where we were undone in the final by a much more experienced Egyptian side. It wasn't to be for the Black Stars once again, trying to win their fifth AFCON title since 1982. And in 2010 we made it to the final, but it wasn't to be for us. Ghana lost that final 1-0 to Egypt. Later on in that year, the Black Stars took to center stage in the World Cup in Africa for the first time. South Africa hosted the 2010 World Cup, and Ghana were represented their second consecutive World Cup we were taking part in, and the Black Stars were in full show. They were the light of Africa. Unfortunately, a Luis Suarez handball from a goal-bound header from Dominic Adia was given as a penalty, and Ghana had the chance to make it to the semi-final for the very first time for an African country, and especially Ghana, since this was only our second World Cup. Asamoah Gyan stepped up and missed that eventual kick, and it was a really sad moment. I remember clearly watching that game and being so much in shock that I couldn't move, and it was quite a sad time for me. Ghana football, a lot of people were really hurt by that. Reports of people having heart attacks because of that, and so on and so forth. So that was how 2010 ended. The Black Stars did Africa proud. The penalty shootout that ensued, unfortunately Ghana could not overcome Uruguay. We lost that penalty shootout. In 2012 there was another African Cup of Nations, and this would be the last time ever that the African Cup of Nations was held in a year for the Euros, or an even numbered year. So in 2012 the African Cup of Nations was held, and Zambia won their very first title with Hervé Renard at the helm for them. They won it by beating Ivory Coast in the final. Ghana finished fourth in this African Cup of Nations. In 2013 in Africa, another African Cup of Nations took place. Now this was a step by CAF to have the African Cup of Nations take place in an odd-numbered year, so it doesn't affect teams that will be preparing for the World Cup. That is usually in the World Cup years. That's when the African Cup of Nations also take place, and it was a big issue that was put forward by the national teams, and CAF heeded to that and decided to shift the African Cup of Nations to 2013. This was an odd-numbered year and never will clash with the World Cup That is why they moved it to 2030. So for the second year in a row, African Cup of Nations was held in South Africa, and Nigeria were the eventual winners. Ghana lost the semi-final to Burkina Faso. Yes, you heard me right. Ghana lost to Burkina Faso in the semi-final and lost the ensuing third place playoff. They lost that one too as well. They lost the third place playoff to Mali 3-1 and were placed fourth. In 2014, another World Cup year for the Ghana Black Stars, we made it once again, third World Cup in a row, and this is where Coach Kwesi Appiah, who was in charge of the Black Stars, was removed from his post. So many issues with player bonuses, player allowance, player payment, delay in payment of player bonuses and allowance, and money had to be shipped all the way from Ghana to Brazil for the players before they agreed to play the final game against Portugal. It was really something we didn't think would happen, but it was a really poor showing by the Black Stars after the standard they had set in the previous two World Cups they took part in. The Commission of Inquiry was organized to look into the matters that took place in 2014 World Cup, and it was brought to the fore that players like Kevin Prince Boateng, according to Coach Kwesi Appiah, he was disobeyed by that player, and that meant that Kevin Prince Boateng would never ever play for the Black Stars again, and he was banned from ever playing for the Black Stars. Coach Kwesi Appiah was removed from his post, and Avram Grant was put in charge. In 2015, he led Ghana to the AFCON final once again, where we met Ivory Coast, and Ivory Coast managed to beat Ghana on penalties once again. The last time we faced them on penalty shootout in 1992, they beat us as well. This time the Ivorians missed their first two kicks and Ghana had the upper hand, but some way somehow the penalty shootout case continues and Ghana failed to make it out of that tournament with the trophy in hand. Ivory Coast Golden Generation won their first ever AFCON title. Yes, Ivory Coast Golden Generation won their first ever AFCON title. In 2016, Ghana failed to make it to the Chan tournament that was held in 2016, and 2017 we won the WAFU tournament here at the Cape Coast Sports Stadium on home soil. In 2015, I have to say, Ghana also won the WAFU tournament. They retained it in 2017 as well, and there was an African Cup of Nations, another African Cup of Nations, another loss to Cameroon in the semis, and we lost the third place playoff. Kwesi Appiah was reappointed as the coach of the Black Stars. The end of the reign, the end of the road for Avram Grant in 2017. After that near semi-final win against Cameroon, we lost 2-0 in the latter part of that game, and that was how Avram Grant lost his job. Kwesi Appiah was reappointed and he led Ghana to their first AFCON qualifier win against Ethiopia. We won 5-0 on that occasion. Asamoah Gyan netting what would be his record 51st goal for Ghana in 106 appearances for the Black Stars, and that was how Asamoah Gyan ended 2017. In 2018, Ghana failed to make it to the fourth World Cup. That would have been the fourth World Cup in a row. Coach Kwesi Appiah took over a qualifying campaign for the World Cup, which was really in tatters already before he took over the reins. Many felt Avram Grant was in charge of that qualifier campaign, but Coach Kwesi Appiah could not do much about it in the opinion of others, and we failed to make it to the 2018 World Cup in Russia. We sat home and watched the rest of Africa play in that World Cup, and history was made in that World Cup for the first time in as long as we could remember. Africa's participation in the World Cup, no African team made it out of the group stages. Senegal failed to make it out of the group stages because of fair play rules. Yeah, I remember really well. The fair play rules did not go in their favor, and Senegal unfortunately could not make it. African Women's Cup of Nations was held in Ghana here, and we failed to make it out of the group and eventually qualify for the Women's World Cup. It was held here in Accra and in Cape Coast. The Ghana Black Queens failed to make it out of their group and qualify for the World Cup in 2019 World Cup, Women's World Cup. The Anas expose was also the highlight of 2018. Anas released an expose revealing the rot and corruption in Ghana football. That brought a halt to the ongoing league, and the normalization committee was formed. There was a normalization committee, special competition to get our representatives for Africa, and the rest, as I say, is history. I've talked extensively on this issue, but these are some of the highlights of 2018. The ANAS expose, African Women's Cup of Nations, and failure to make it to the World Cup. In 2019 February, we took part in the Under-20 African Cup of Nations, and once again Ghana failed to make it out of their group and possibly make it into the Under-20 World Cup. We lost our final group game to Mali. We just needed a draw to make it through out of that group, but Mali wanted it more than us, and they showed much more hunger than Ghana ever did in the tournament, and that was how it ended for the Black Satellites, and they failed to make it out of their group. 2019 African Cup of Nations ensued, and the Black Stars once again suffered heartbreak in penalty shootout. We lost penalty shootout to Tunisia at the round of 16. The year of return, many dubbed it the year in which Ghana were looking to break their 37-year heading to 40-year trophy drought at the African Cup of Nations, and it wasn't to be for the Ghana Black Stars. Asamoah Gyan had an issue with the Black Stars. He decided to quit the Black Stars because he would not be named captain according to rumors. Intervention from the president of the land, and he was called back into the squad and made it into the African Cup of Nations. He played a bit part role in this tournament, could not influence the game as much as we would have wanted him to, and that was the end of the story for the AFCON 2019. And in 2019 as well, we took part in the WAFU tournament. Ghana, the most successful side in the WAFU tournament with 2 trophies. We're looking to make it 3 in a row. It wasn't to be. We played it in Senegal, and Senegal went to the final with Ghana. We lost to Senegal on penalties once again. 4 major penalty losses in 2019 alone with the national team. The WAFU tournament was another one that we lost on penalties against Senegalese side. The Black Stars be failing to make it 3 in a row. Shafiu Mumuni scored a hat-trick and was the highest goal scorer of the tournament, and he earned his first call-up to the Black Stars. The first ever AFCON 2021 qualifiers were also held in November this year, and also the Under-23 African Cup of Nations to determine which team would make it to the Olympic Games. We made it to that tournament, and we made it out of our group and into the last 4. Only the top 3 would have made it to the Olympic Games. Ghana failed once again on penalty shootout against, first of all, Ivory Coast and also South Africa. We lost 2 straight penalty shootouts in the same competition, and it was really a really painful 2019. So that has been it for today. I've been looking at the decade in Ghana football, but who has been your best player of the decade for you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments box. There were so many club competitions for Kotoko and Adriana Stars, as well as Ashanti Gold I didn't touch on, but those were some of the highlights of the decade so far, and we hope the next decade will be much more memorable and exciting as the previous one ever was. I'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy your day.